So hey, it's Paul, and in this video I want to talk about anxiety, because anxiety is probably something that we will all experience at some point in our life. Now, some will experience it worse than others, but anxiety and anxious thoughts are something that we probably are all going to experience, and at the same time it might be something that we need to support someone who's struggling with anxiety. So what I want to do is I want to share 7 tips, 7 things that have helped me, and hopefully they're going to help you too. Let's just dive straight in. The first one is breathing. Now, this is probably something that you've heard before, and it sounds like such easy advice to give, but sometimes we neglect the breath. Sometimes we neglect the importance of breathing, and when we're suffering with anxiety, when we're feeling anxious thoughts coming in and arising, and when we're worrying and we can't switch off our minds, sometimes breathing can really take us away. Breathing can make us feel present. Now, I'm not just talking about the same breathing patterns that you do every single day that has got you into this place of feeling anxious. I'm talking about more focused breathing, deeper breathing, and almost mindfulness in a way. All it is sometimes is closing our eyes and focusing in on our breathing that can take us away from our anxious thoughts. Sometimes when our mind is racing, full of anxiety, closing our eyes, focusing in on our breath, breathing in for 4 and out for 6 can sometimes make us feel more calm, and it can really help with the anxiety. The second tip is affirmations. And again, when we're struggling with anxiety, our mind is racing and it's telling us a lot of negative thoughts. And when it comes to this, what I've found it to be is almost like a computer. We turn it on the same way every single day. And when we want to try and change the way our computer interacts, when we want to change the way our computer behaves, what do we need to do? We need to reprogram the computer. It's very much the same with this. And when I was really struggling with anxiety, this was shortly after my dad's suicide, I didn't know how to switch off these thoughts. And I remember Anne, the lady who helped me massively, she told me about affirmations. She told me about reprogramming the mind. And at first I just thought it was a load of hoo-ha. I didn't understand it. I didn't believe that it could be possible. But with time and with constant practice, those affirmations started to change the way that I thought. It started to change my mind's programming. And every time I then felt more anxious, these more positive affirmations kicked in, and it helped me deal with them in a much better way. Now, there's a lot of affirmations out there that you can find online. There's a lot of videos around affirmations, but essentially when we're having more anxious thoughts, we need to catch that thought and replace it with more of a positive affirmation. Maybe something that reaffirms gratitude, maybe something that reaffirms what we already have, rather than thinking about what we haven't got, which is causing these anxious thoughts. So definitely look at using affirmations, and when you're having anxious thoughts, replace them with something more positive. The third tip is to think about the bigger picture. Now, this for me is all about perspective. If you've watched my videos before, you've probably heard me speak about it before, but essentially thinking about the bigger picture can take away the worry, because when we're worrying, we are really consumed about what's going on in our minds. But sometimes if we actually look at the bigger picture, that worry can become a lot less than what it is in our minds. So an example of that is, on the other day I was worried that I wasn't going to make it to a trip to America because I forgot to do my visa, and when I went to do my visa it said pending approval, and I wasn't going to be able to board the plane without that visa. So I went upstairs, I went and tried to get some sleep. I couldn't shut my mind off because all of this anxiety was kind of surrounding me. But I then thought about the bigger picture. I looked at it in a perspective way, and I said, okay, I might not make the trip, but is my health okay? I was laying next to my wife at the time, and again, that was me looking at the bigger picture and thinking, but everything's okay with my family. No one's been hurt. Could I meet the guy that I was meeting in Atlanta when he gets to the UK? Could I maybe fly out a day later if my visa then works then? Sometimes when I look at it in the bigger picture and I say to myself, is this what I'm worrying about right now going to affect me when I'm 95 years old? Is this what I'm worrying about right now going to affect me in 3, 4, 5 years time? And looking at the bigger picture can sometimes make the worrying thoughts a lot smaller. In the end, the visa was approved a couple of hours later. I made it on the plane, I made it to the trip, and at the end of the trip I said to myself, why was I worrying? Why was I really struggling to deal with those anxious thoughts when everything was okay? And sometimes put it into the bigger picture can really help. Tip number 4 is drop the need to be perfect. A lot of my anxious thoughts, a lot of my worrying was due to my own expectations of myself. I had to be perfect. If I'd maybe let someone down, if I was worrying that I hadn't done something to my own expectations or the expectations of others, I would worry and worry and worry. Just drop the need to be perfect. We're all human beings. We all make mistakes. Every other human is more consumed about their own thoughts, their own insecurities, their own worries. They're not worrying or judging you as much as that we believe they are. And sometimes we need to drop that need to be perfect, because for me, perfectionism is the biggest killer of action taking. Perfectionism really takes over this, and it can really control our anxiety. To drop the need to be perfect, you're human. It's okay to make mistakes. We can learn from those mistakes. Don't judge yourself. Tip number 5 is to visualize a happier place. And essentially what we can do is we can combine this with the first tip of breathing. So when we are breathing, when we're trying to stay focused in on our breath, when we're trying to stay present in that moment, rather than worrying about what we've got going on in our minds, sometimes we can use the strategy of visualization. We can start to visualize a happier place. We can start to visualize a scenario that's a lot more positive than what our mind is telling us. And visualization is a really, really powerful strategy that we can use to control our anxiety, but also feel more positive. There's a lot of ways to do it, but for me, I always say just let your imagination run wild. Remember when you was a child, you had such a big imagination, and then when you become an adult, your adult voice silences your child voice. It very quickly silences your imagination and tells you to not be imaginative at all. In this scenario, use as much imagination as you can. Think of a happier place, visualize yourself somewhere nice, visualize yourself with everything being okay, and that can really, really calm you down. Tip number 6 is to talk about it. Again, when I was really, really struggling with my anxiety, I didn't tell anyone because I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought there was something drastically wrong that I needed to do, and I didn't talk about it. I just tried to deal with it on my own. More importantly as well, I bottled it up. And I thought that it would just go away. But really with anxiety, it's only going to get worse if we don't deal with it, if we don't talk about it. So please, don't be ashamed, don't be afraid to talk about it. Anxiety is, as I said at the beginning of this video, something that probably we will all experience at some point in our lives in different scales, but we will all experience it, or we will all know someone that will experience anxiety. So please don't be ashamed to talk about it. If you want to use the comments below, if you want to email me at paul@pmcgregor.com and vent and get across everything that you need to do, don't be afraid to talk about it, because if you bottle it up, it's only going to get worse. And the last and final tip number 7, is to face your fears. Anxiety sometimes comes from fear, and we are anxious about doing something because we fear doing it. And sometimes the best way to break that anxiety is to just do it. It's to face that comfort zone. It's to face that fear. It's going to be extremely difficult at first, but once you do it time and time again, you'll start to find that that anxiety will start to disappear. Social anxiety, of course, is the main one. To use this example, when you're anxious about social situations, you have a lot of fear around going into social situations. Sometimes the best way of dealing with that social anxiety is to break that fear. It's to push through that fear, push that comfort zone, go to more social situations, and then with time you'll start to find more confidence in it. I was very anxious around public speaking. The first public speaking I ever did, I don't think I slept for 3 days. I was sweating, I practiced it so much, I had huge amounts of anxiety around it because I'd never done it before. But essentially, once I faced that fear once, I did it again, I did it again, I did it again, the anxiety around public speaking became a lot less. So please don't be afraid to realize what you're anxious about and facing that fear. Facing that fear, breaking the comfort zone, can start to deal with your anxiety as well. So there we have it, 7 things that will hopefully help you with your anxiety. Another thing that I just want to chuck in as a bonus, call it 8 if you want, is to know your triggers, know what makes you feel anxious. We're all different. This video, these tips that I share can be applied, but anxiety is so individual. So understanding your own anxiety, understanding what makes you feel anxious, understanding the situations, the scenarios that make you feel anxious as well is so important before you start applying those tips. So please do let me know if this video helped you in the comments below. Again, you can drop me an email at paul@pmcgregor.com as well if you want to get in touch, or message me across any of the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you want to find me. I'd really appreciate any tips on this video or the videos coming forward. If this has helped, please let me know, and I'll see you all in a video very soon.